1999. And in one of those first debates, there was a debate about sign language. And the comparisons that was used then was, again, the slight lack of interpreters that we have in Scotland compared with the interpreters we have in Finland. That was 15 years ago. 15 years have passed and we're still using the same comparisons. The ratio, as we know, is one interpreter for every 6 deaf people in Finland, whereas here in Scotland it is one in every 100 deaf people. Now, the BSL bill is an enabling bill, and although there are no specific provisions for the number of interpreters or teachers of the deaf, the hopes for the BSL bill are twofold. That raising the profile of the language will stimulate and encourage people to undertake training, and secondly, that the interest and demand for more translation and interpretation services will encourage training courses to be expanded in education centres across Scotland. Now, if we look closely at the bill, and I'm sure everybody in the room tonight will be aware of the plans that have been outlined in the BSL bill, and I'm really pleased that Hilary Third is here tonight from the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government has produced a memorandum on the bill, which Hilary discussed in her presentation. And certainly I'm incredibly pleased that the Scottish Government are in support of the principles of the bill, and in a number of areas their memorandum actually strengthens the bill, which is absolutely perfect. The bill will place a responsibility on Scottish Government ministers to promote BSL throughout the Scottish society. The bill also requires the Scottish Government and a range of listed public authorities to produce BSL plans as a way of compelling them to consider the needs of BSL users when it comes to accessibility of information and the proposed service delivery. The range of organisations that have been listed represent education, police, health, local government and justice sectors, among others. And these really are the key priority areas. Under the plans, the public bodies must produce action plans based on the national plan and following guidance issued by the Scottish Government. Now, if the bill is passed, the Scottish Government must assign responsibility for BSL to a Cabinet Secretary or a Junior Minister, and the Minister must produce the BSL plan, which will set out its strategy. There is a requirement in the bill for the Government to consult on the national plan with persons who use BSL and organisations who represent BSL users. For example, the BDA or other organisations, perhaps organisations that represent BSL users on the cross-country group on deafness in the Scottish Parliament. And within 12 months of the publication of the national plan, each listed authority must publish its own plan and set out what measures the authority plans to take to access information for BSL users. Authorities will be expected to consult in the same manner as the Scottish Government. Now, to assure effective scrutiny, the bill also requires a performance review process. Scottish ministers will be required to present a performance review before the Parliament, which will record measures taken and outcomes attained by the national plan and, of course, by the authority plans, and highlight best practice as well as naming and shaming those organisations that have failed to take action. So I hope that's not too complicated. And as I previously stated, it is excellent that we can finally see light at the end of the tunnel with the BSL bill. In terms of the current process that we're undertaking at the moment, the bill has been scrutinised by the Education and Culture Committee in the Parliament. Mark provided evidence to that committee in December, and will do so again in March. Between now and then, a number of deaf organisations and deaf individuals will be asked to provide evidence to the committee. The bill at that stage will then go to the full Parliament. It gets support of the majority of 129 MSPs. It will move to what we call stage 2, where amendments will be made, likely will be made. It will then go back to the full Parliament for a final reading, and further amendments can be made at that point. Once again, I apologise on behalf of Mark Griffin, who couldn't be here tonight. I'm sorry for those of you who came expecting Batman and you're supposed to endure Robin. I apologise for that. But I do thank you for your information here tonight. I thank the BA and all the organisations for support that they've shown to Mark and myself over the last several years. We are also grateful to the Scottish Government for their memorandum and are confident that many of the suggestions they made will strengthen the bill. We are only 12 days into 2015, but I'm hopeful that 1 year from now we will have a BSL Act and be firmly on the road to improving access to information and services for BSL users throughout the country. Thank you very much.
Okay, you will have the opportunity to ask questions later on. Now I could introduce Hilary Third. Hilary Third works for the Scottish Government to be making the responses for BSL.
Okay, thank you, Lillian, and it's lovely to be here this evening. I've been really looking forward to it. I've been working on the government memorandum, trying to think about how we can make the bill work so that it achieves all the things that you want. And hopefully some of the suggestions in the government memorandum will do that. And I'm going to talk a bit about our suggested changes in a minute. I'm not going to use all my slides though because Frank has already covered some of the things I was going to say. So I'm going to start by reinforcing what Frank said, which is the government supports the bill. That's really important. We support the bill. And until the bill was actually published at the end of October, and we had a chance to consider the detail, we were unable to say what the government's view would be because, as you know, this is a member's bill, it's not a government bill. And really, the government support is crucial to actually passing through into legislation. So, Frank talked about Mark's bill as published. What I'm going to talk about is some of the changes that the government would like him to make to the bill. And we think that the changes we've suggested will make it better. We think it will make it stronger and more effective. I'm going to try and explain to you what the bill suggests on certain issues and what we would like to change, hopefully in a way that will leave you clear and explicit what the bill is likely to look like as it makes its way through the stages that Frank described. Because the important point here is that Mark Griffin has said that he likes our suggestions. So he is working with us to look at how to incorporate our changes into his bill. But it's more than likely that the changes I'm going to tell you about will be in the bill. And the way that will happen is as amendments at stage 2. There could be other amendments as well. I can't speak about that. It will depend what the Education and Culture Committee members think and what other MSPs think. But the changes that I'm going to describe to you are very likely to be amendments at stage 2. So, the government supports the bill. That was a really important moment, I think, for the BSL community to know that the government backs the bill. Like Frank, we recognise that deafness is a culture, not a disability. That BSL is a language, not a means of communication. But we do understand that BSL is a vital means of communication for deaf people. And that without it, you can't access public services to which you're entitled or information that you need, all kinds of things that you need to live an ordinary life. Without access to information and services in BSL, you can't participate in daily and public life in the way that you want to. And you can't make your contribution as active citizens. So we as a country are missing you have to offer if we don't make that communication possible. So there is inequality and human rights dimension as well, which is perhaps like this in the equality unit, which is where I work. So we have formally stated our support for the bill. That's set out in the government memorandum that Fred referred to. There's quite a lot of detail in that. There has to be, because legislation is, by its nature, very detailed and precise. But there's also a summary, which is about 2.5 pages long, and the BSL version of the summary. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. And as I said, we'll be working with Mark Griffin to look at how to improve the bill. And the reason that we suggested these changes is because we wanted to make a real practical difference to youth, to BSL users across Scotland, and we believe that our changes will help to do that. I think so. Before I talk about the detail of the bill and our changes, I'd like to say we're not starting from zero, although I appreciate that it might feel like that to you sometimes as you go about your day and you can't access information in BSL. It might feel as if we're not doing anything, but actually we have done quite a lot to support BSL already at a national level and at the local level. The equality unit where I work has worked with what we call the BSL and Linguistic Access Working Group since 2000. It's actually one of the first groups that was set up after the Parliament was established. And that group, which includes BDA and SCORD, organisations involved in the delivery of training such as Harriet Watt, and a number of other organisations, has helped to advise us on the priorities for deaf people and on the things that would make a difference. And we've been quite active in trying to take some of those actions over the years, including, for example, investing millions of pounds in trying to increase the number of interpreters in Scotland. It's not quick, it's not easy, but we've worked hard with a number of partners to try to do that. Also, we've done a lot of work to increase the training of tutors, and increase the number of tutors who can teach BSL at higher levels. So there are a whole number of things that we try to do to improve the delivery of BSL and to promote the language and improve access to services in the language. So what the bill is aiming to do is not a change in direction for the government. It's making an acceleration of some of the things that we have already tried to do. But we're already moving in that direction, which is perhaps why we felt able to support the bill, because we agree with a lot of what it's trying to do, and it's very much in tune with our own thinking. And in fact, when we get to thinking about what might be in the first BSL national plan, we're at a pretty good start because of the work of the BSL and Linguistic Access groups that I've described. I want to echo another point that Frank made, which is that legislation is not a magic wand. Much as we might want it to be so, things will not happen automatically just because they are in legislation. And the things that are difficult now will still be difficult if the bill is passed. We will still have a shortage of interpreters. And there are many other difficulties that I'm sure we can identify. But it's really important that the legislation that we do pass is workable, that it's good legislation that has the best chance of making a difference. So part of the job of the committee, the Education and Culture Committee that's scrutinising the bill, and the Parliament, is to make sure that the legislation is good. And that's what the changes we've suggested are about. So, I'm now going to get back to my slide. I think I've covered that one. I'm going to talk now about some of the details of the bill, some of the things that Mark's bill wants to do, and some of the ways that we would like to change that. So got about 8 points to make, one in each slide. So the first point, section 1 of the bill is about placing a duty on the Scottish Government to publish a BSL national plan, which sets out how the government will promote and facilitate the use of and understanding of BSL across our activities. Well, the main thing to say is that we agree with that. We think that makes a lot of sense to have a national focus. And as I said before, we think that it should build on the work of the BSL and linguistic access working group. So we have a pretty good idea of the kinds of priorities, the things that deaf people think should change, and what we could do at the national level that would make a difference. We think that it should focus on agreed national priorities. And those priorities should be agreed by a new group, by a BSL national advisory group that we think should be made up of key organisations and have a significant proportion of BSL users on it. And I think that's an important principle. So, in summarising, we agree that there should be a national plan, but we want it to be focused around agreed national priorities. Now, the bill, as published, says that a junior or a cabinet secretary or a junior minister should be assigned to be the lead minister for the bill. Now, actually, this is one area where we don't agree, because in legislation, all Scottish ministers have collective responsibility, not just one particular minister. And having a lead minister who's named in the legislation would be at odds with that. However, as is the case with any piece of legislation or any policy, it would always be assigned to a minister, to their portfolio to lead on. So, in effect, it would mean much the same thing. Now, at the moment, the lead minister is Dr. Allen, which will please you, because he leads on languages, not on disability or equality. So I think from your point of view, that's the right person. We don't know who will be the lead minister in terms of their portfolio if the bill is passed, but at the moment, that is Dr. Allen. So we're saying we don't think that a lead minister should be assigned in legislation, but in practice, there would be a lead minister who has responsibility to answer the parliamentary questions about BSL and so on. Okay? So, the next section of the bill is about public bodies, so local authorities, councils, people that you come into contact with day in, day out. It says that they should also have BSL plans that say what they're going to do to improve access to BSL for their services. And we agree with that as well, because most of the things that actually impact on deaf people's lives are delivered by local public bodies rather than by the government. And we think that makes a lot of sense. And we also agree with Mark's suggestion that they should mirror the national plan, because if these are national priorities, there's an important point about how those are delivered consistently in local areas. So we agree with the principle of having authority plans. There is an important point here, though. This part of the slide where we said we'd like to consider maybe talking about BSL statements rather than BSL plans, with a second part attached to that, which sets out what specific actions that public body, that listed authority, will take to work towards the agreed priorities that have been set out in the national plan. There are different reasons for that. I think that statement gives the feeling of a celebratory recognition statement. There's something in there about recognizing recognising BSL as a language in statements. But also, for me, it gives an impression of something that's more focused and streamlined. What we don't want is to see 117 listed authorities produce really long and detailed plans that sit on a shelf. What we want is a clear statement that each of these authorities recognises BSL as a language, to give it its place, and then clear and concise information about what they're going to do over what period of time to make progress towards the focused national priorities. And we think that this is a way of streamlining and simplifying the requirements, but actually making them stronger and more focused. Because, like it or not, there is an issue about the burden on public bodies, about how much work they're being asked to do. Now, it's fine asking them to do work, but we want that work to actually result in improved services, not in a bigger plan. So we would like to think more about moving away from talking about a detailed plan in for elected authorities, and more about a clear statement recognising BSL with specific information about what they're going to do under each of the national priorities. So I'd be really interested to hear your views on that kind of idea, because what I don't want you to think is that this is a way of watering down what we're asking authorities to do. For us, I think it's a way about getting the right balance between what we're asking public bodies who are very hard pressed, under pressure to do, and what benefit we hope to achieve from that. What we don't want is a hugely expensive administrative process with very little to show for it. But I'm sure we'll have some discussion about that. There's a really important principle around consulting. In fact, in disability, which I also cover in my job, but separately from BSL, all the reasons that we've already discussed, we've gone beyond consultation and we talk about involvement. It's a really important principle that we don't believe that in government we know best, and so we say what we're going to do and then we tell you. It's important that we involve you in developing our thinking so that what we develop actually meets your needs. So if it doesn't work, we're just going to have to go back and do it again, apart from anything else. But I do have a slight concern about how it's going to work, asking the government and 117 separate listed authorities to consult separately on their BSL plans all at the same time. Because there's probably not even 117 people here tonight. How is that going to work? How practically will that happen? Will BDA be sent 100 in 1 week with public bodies saying, can you tell us what you think you do? So it's an important principle, but I think we need to look at ways of doing it in a meaningful and manageable way. And one of the things that we've suggested is that we could possibly change the bill to look at a way of having almost like a collective consultation. So obviously there needs to be some more thinking about this, but your views would really help us to think this through. Is there a way in which we could have a sort of central gathering in of authority plans and almost summarise them perhaps, and have some process whereby you can give your group your views on a group of plans or on a theme that's emerging through several plans. So it's not that we're saying we don't think listed authorities should have to consult on their plans. It's about thinking, how do we do it in a way that's meaningful and actually improves the process without being unreasonable to all of you? Because you are the people who it would fall to. How is that going to work? So I'd be really interested in your views on that. And it ties in with the possibility of setting up a BSL National Advisory Group. You know, if that has a high proportion of BSL users, and it maybe linked with a wider community of BSL users, using organisations like the BDA and God, using new technology, the way that the Parliament uses the Facebook page, which is fantastic, exactly what we should be doing as public bodies, you know, finding out how you want to engage with us and then doing it. You know, we need to think creatively about how to make sure that the plans actually do meet your needs and as good as you think they can be, but without unreasonable expectations on you to do that work. So I'm sure we'll come back to that. It'd be good to hear your thoughts. Okay, so the bill provides for a performance review. This is obviously really important because there's no point having plans without then looking at what progress has been made and what more could be done. And, you know, certainly the mood in government and talk is very much about continuous improvement. And to improve, you need to look at where you're not doing so well and address that. And you need to build on and increase what you're doing well. So we agree with the principle of a performance review. But again, we think that we need to have the right people who are assisting with that. You can't just have civil servants, you know, working with ministers saying we think this is always good enough. Because, you know, we are the experts. We are essentially administrators. You're the experts. So again, this is the proposed BSL National Advisory Group, which is really informed by the people who know best, which have a role in that. Really importantly, given that what's behind the bill, I think, is about improving outcomes and day-to-day life for BSL users, that group could also provide practical support to the Scottish Government and to listed authorities to improve performance. I think we've been missing something if we just said, well, that's a good plan and that's not a good plan, that's a good way of doing it, that's not. We want to go further and actually help support the improvement. So I think we would want to be using the performance review as a way of providing that support. And again, by using the group of experts who would be better able to do that. And we're already talking to the organisations that we currently fund, God, BDA, about how the work they're doing can really focus on what practical support public bodies need in order to improve in preparation for the bill. So I'm just about almost there, and it's quite a lot of detail to get through, and it's quite dry as well, so I'm trying to make it interesting. But I think, you know, this is an example of where you need to get beyond the sentiment and actually see what the detail are, so that you can provide a meaningful response. So you need to get into this level of detail. But I think probably the final thing, almost, is around the timing. So the bill as published sets out a cycle for reporting and review and practical about when the national plan would have to be published and how long after the bill came to force, and then when the performance review would happen. We've had quite a bit of discussion about this, and partly because of the experience of the Gaelic Language Act, we feel that the 4-year cycle set out in the bill is far too short. So I know everybody wants to see change happen quickly, keep the momentum going, but actually break down the time scale in the bill. There's very little time. I forget now, I'm probably getting it wrong if I try and guess, but it's maybe a year or something between the publication of the first authority plans and then the preparation of the performance review. And what we don't want is for all the emphasis to be on producing a plan and then producing material for the review. And feedback from organisations who have had to implement the Gaelic Language Act, which has a 5-year cycle, is that 5 years is too short. So we're suggesting a 7-year cycle, which gives sufficient time to implement the actions and to make a real difference before you get around to reviewing performance. And we feel that will help to ensure that the emphasis is on action I'm sure people will have views about that, but I wanted to try to explain why we suggested a longer cycle. So listed authorities, at the moment there are 117 listed authorities. I don't have very much to say about this except that we did flag in the government memorandum that we need to check that list was right. I think there are a few organisations on there that maybe shouldn't be on there, or organisations that maybe aren't on there that should be on there, but I can't say more about that just now, just that we think we need to take a look at it. But one question that we did have is whether it should be possible for listed authorities to work together on a shared plan. How that would actually work in legislation when you could give an option is something that lawyers will have to tell us when we get to that point. But I can imagine a situation where you had authorities who work together quite closely in a particular geographical area, perhaps, deciding that they might consider having a shared BSL plan, whether that would make sense for them. Or, for example, the island authorities. There are 3 island authorities that have, someone can correct me on my figures, I'm sure, but the census shows us really small numbers of BSL users, okay? There's not a reason to say you don't have to do a plan, because you don't play the numbers game. Just because it's a small number, it doesn't mean it's not important. But is there a practical way of enabling and supporting them to do the work which reduces the burden on them individually and means they can share learning? There's something that's going to work for one of the island authorities. It might work for the others as well, and wouldn't that be sensible? So is there some provision we need to make in the bill that makes that possible? Well, acknowledging that no two organisations are exactly the same, and no two communities are exactly the same. But there are already examples of public bodies working together through planning partnerships or through the new, forget what they're called, I'm not sure what they're called, health and social care partnerships. So, yes, you know, should we make it possible for there to be a shared plan? So, again, interested to hear your thoughts on that. And here's something that we've added in that wasn't in the original bill, which I'm sure will suit you. The bill, as published, did not include the requirement to translate plans into BSL. To be honest, I think that was probably down to cost, and just not wanting to make the cost look prohibitive. But we felt that it was unreasonable really to have the bill without that provision. And so we suggested that the Scottish Government and the authority should be required to translate their BSL plans into BSL. You know, actually, that's another reason for suggesting that what we ask listed authorities to do should be concise and focused, because it is really, really expensive to translate into BSL. In these financial times where literally every penny counts, and I can't tell you how tight budgets are in my own division, you know, everything matters. It's really down to the wire on the finances. And the 2.5-page government memorandum that I referred to as summary that we commissioned a BSL translation of cost £900 plus that. That's a lot of money. Public authorities who want to improve their services to BSL users are going to be thinking in cash terms as well, you know? I only say that because I think that when you're thinking about what you would like to see in the bill, you have to be realistic and practical about what the costs are and where you would rather the resources go. So a plan that's hundreds of pages long, which was the case for some of the first Gaelic language plans, is going to have prohibitive costs and is maybe not going to achieve the kind of outcome we want. So, while we do think that plans should be translated into BSL, we can see a real value in keeping the work concise, streamlined, and focus. And that's just one practical example, it's not the main one. So, if people are just about still with me, really just to echo what I said at the start, which is that we support the bill, we want to make sure that it makes a real practical difference to BSL users across Scotland. We think that the changes that we've suggested will simplify and strengthen the bill, make it easier for listed authorities to implement and focus on action and not just paperwork. But I'm really interested to hear what you think, and that will inform our thinking about the details that goes into the amendment. So for that reason, I'm really glad that BDI has funded the event. I'm really grateful to you. See so many people here, and although I do know some people haven't been involved for a while, it's really nice to see a lot of people that I've never met before. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say, and thanks again for coming.
Okay. Now, just very quickly, you will have the opportunity to ask for any points of clarification, because we have Frank and Hilary. Now, do we have somebody here? Please give your name. And now we're really just looking for points of clarification as opposed to questions at this point. Hello everybody, my name is Scott Campbell and I'm from Glasgow. I have a question to yourself, Hilary. You're talking about it being very expensive to translate the materials, and this is not in any way to challenge you, but I think that MSPs were able to claim somewhat dodgy expenses, and do have legitimate expenses, of course, but they need to have access to materials in their own language. My father is in home care at the minute, and he's very well looked after, and there are hearing families to enable that as well. Now, Lillian is just interjecting here and saying this really wasn't the time for questions. Apologies from Scott. Right, so to clarify, if the BSL bill is passed, how then will you publicise that so that it's clear for BSL users? Is it going to be announced in the newspapers, on television? Where is the visual communication making that pertinent to the deaf community to understand what's been happening?
Firstly, I'm worried now I'm going to get into trouble for saying how much it costs to translate the government summary. That's everyone that says that. But the point that I was making there was not to say we shouldn't do it, because, you need access to the information. It doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't matter how much it costs. It's not your problem. But the point I was making is that you have to be realistic about the cost and the constraints in local authority budget, and just think about where do you want the money to go. That was my point in making that, but I probably shouldn't have said that. It would be really important to use the kind of vehicles that Parliament has used, the BSL Facebook page, to make sure that people know about the bill that was passed and what it means. And I think we'll be relying on BDA and other partner organisations and all of you to spread the word. But, we don't have all the answers for everything either. And I think over the next
one more point of clarification. Hello everybody, my name is Jim Colquhoun. Hello, hello, yes, nice to see you again. Now, this is a point for Hillary. I know that there are lots of comparisons with the Gaelic language, and you were talking about the 4 year reviews and possibly now stretching that out to 7 years. Now, for my own personal opinion, that may be different for other people in the audience, of course, but if you're looking at education, etc., and having to wait for 7 years, I disagree quite strongly with that. I have to say, I really think that's far too long. That's the point I was wanting to make. It's a very long time. It could be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, but 7 years is too long.
I can just answer that briefly. I can understand why you're saying that. That's where you've gone now. Oh, I can really understand why you're saying that, and I think if I were sitting there, I would say the same thing as well. It's not sort of 7 years before anything happens. The way that the bill sets out the timescale, the first authority plans would be published in May 2018, and then the first performance review about what progress has been made would be published in June 2019. That's only 1 year. So as soon as you publish the authority plan, it's that you go back to those same people, and rather than saying, so how are you going to improve that, you say, what have you done? And they won't have time to do anything. So for 7 years would mean that there would be 3 years between them saying what they were going to do and then ministers going back and saying, well, now you tell us what you've done. And we felt that was a more realistic time scale. So 7 years sort of makes it sound worse than it is. But we think that you couldn't expect very much to happen in the space of a year. And so there would be a lot of work going into a performance review that would not necessarily tell you very much, rather than the work going into making the improvements. But as I say, I can understand. I'd be surprised if somebody hadn't said that, to be honest. But I'd be interested to see what other people think. Again, it's about trying to make it more practical and deliverable and effective.
Right, running just sure reasons coming to government just for a point of clarification. Hello everybody, my name is Teresa Wheat. And just going back to Jim's point, now what was it? Hillary, when you're talking about the 7 years and then having the review, is that going to be an ongoing process, or is it going to be one-off after the 7 years? Because I know that there will be funding that will come, as there is in other cases where you have funding for 2 years or 3 years, and then whatever is achieved in that time is almost lost. So is there going to be ongoing work with this? Because I want to see that for my grandchildren's benefit.
Yes, the bill suggests, it would be an ongoing process. But it would be a cycle, it would be a regular cycle. So on our suggestion, the first national plan will be published in May 2017. The first authority plan 1 year later. 3 years after that, you have the first performance review that covers what's happened since those plans were published. And then in May 2023, you have the second national plan, which builds on the performance review. And then a year after that, you have the second authority plan. And then the same thing would happen again on the same cycle. So once it's in legislation, it happens on that basis forever, essentially.
Okay, now it's time to talk participation. Could I please ask the panel members to come to the front? Okay, and I think April from BD Scotland. We're just sorting out if she's going to come in the front. She would maybe be behind the podium, but okay. Right, so if I can just quickly see who's on the panel. I know that everybody will be desperate to ask questions and make their points. So, first of all, we have April Hepner from BD Scotland. A little wave there from behind the podium. And we have Professor Graham Turner from Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. Then we have next to him John Dennerley from Deaf Connections. And then we have Moira Ross. Moira Ross, as I said. And she is representing the deaf community. And the last person here we have is Frank Thompson. And he is the Deafblind manual user, and he's from Deafblind Scotland. Okay, and I am changing, I'm sure you know who I am. So now we have an open floor. If you have issues that you would like to ask, remember this is your opportunity to have a response and for evidence to be collected. So, who would you like to open? Somebody from the back? Right. As I had previously mentioned, right, to repeat, so back to what I said. My name is Scott Campbell, and I'm from Glasgow. There's something I'm concerned about. I know this is slightly off point, however, I'm just thinking about the future situation. My father is currently in care, he's a hearing gentleman. I have hearing family who take care of that situation. It's difficult for me though, just thinking about, for example, if I was to become ill or if other deaf people were to become ill and be in care, what happens to them in the future? Is there a place for that situation in the bill? Okay, if I can respond to that. Thank you for raising that point. It's of real value, particularly for people that live in rural areas. Now, as Hilary has already said, we have 117 listed authorities. And it's really important that we are able to support people who are caring for profoundly deaf BSL users in care settings. Now, whether that's a OAT home, a care home situation, it can be very expensive to fund that. As you know, there's a great emphasis on care in the community. So the BSL will certainly contribute to that, in that more people will have BSL communication to offer access and possibly for the people to stay in their own home longer with access to BSL. I think Adam's possibly going to respond as well. When you're talking about the home care situation, if you think about the BSL national plan as it sets out at the minute, all the local authorities would have to feed into that. But it's very important that everybody will be following the same sort of strategy as regards that, and deaf services and deaf care as far as them having access and inclusion. That certainly is the hope. I don't know that we can guarantee it, but certainly that will be a part of the national plan. Because one day that could be any of us in that situation, so you're right, so to raise that as a potential issue in the future. Hello everybody, my name is Sandra Todd. I have two sons and they grew up with deaf parents. My two sons are hearing. And their friends, when they were round about the house, just that seemed to spark an interest in them, and they were saying to me, well, where can we go to learn? Now, there was some basics that I could certainly show them, but it would just have been wonderful. Yes, help to introduce nursery, primary, and secondary school. I think it's so important. It's like if you think the foreign spoken languages, French, German, Spanish, etc. Those languages are all available, and my son would ask every year at school, could we please have some BSL? And there's nothing. Now, he found up to his last year in secondary school, he was asking. So it's so important because there is interest out there. A lot of deaf people would benefit if more hearing people were able to sign to a certain extent. It's so important to be popular.
I would totally agree with you. If you start in nursery, for example, my parents were both hearing, my mother and my family, and I'll say that I wouldn't say I had a great communication. It's a huge breakdown. And me being the only deaf child, I know that I couldn't relate with lots of other hearing children. And I feel like the BSL field is quite important from nursery children and adults as well to develop. So once a child has been diagnosed, they learn a language, and that becomes enriched, and that becomes a social. So you can talk to your neighbour, you can go to the shop, you can talk to anyone on the street. Full integration. If there's something that I might add, quite brief. As you be well, I agree with you totally 100%. And BSL is it should be part of the curriculum. And I totally agree with that. However, the bill cannot force education or schools to change their policies. For school authorities, they have their own authority and they can decide for themselves. Some can pick French, some might pick German language, part of their curriculum, depending on their own needs. So they have a bit of flexibility amongst the ownership. In relation to the BSL bill, it's impossible to change these circumstances. However, if the BSL bill is passed and when it's passed successfully, people can actually start a ripple effect throughout the communities and education, so they are pressured into receiving and making the changes for the deaf community. So it can happen through the bill, but not directly. Again, I think Frank says it can't be a magic wand, but through change and time, the ripple effect, it can change education and education's attitude towards sign language.
Now, Enrique. Hello, everybody. Hello. My name is Enrique Canton. Now, just thinking of, I am also a member of the Deaf Equalities Forum. Now, just thinking about a timeline. So if you think about a labyrinth, something that's very difficult to navigate, and you're trying to look into a labyrinth, something could be missing. For example, the council maybe have events, say for example, as regards to BSL bill, and they organise it for people to come along, deaf people can go and participate. However, they may not have access either to the language or necessarily understand the politics or the history linked into that. So it can be very difficult for deaf people attending these kinds of events to have a very clear idea of what it's all about and how it can affect them. So my question in relation to that then is, why don't the Scottish Government or other public bodies fund somebody, a post, as has been mentioned, advocacy has been an important part of the BSL bill. Why not invite deaf people via the Scottish Government and connecting or working through the PDA, have a deaf person in place to take that understanding and that knowledge out to the deaf community and communicate that to them in their own language at a level that they would understand so that they can participate more fully. Hillary, would you like to respond to that perhaps?
I think that we are already funding quite a bit of work through SCOD and through the BDA, and we see those organisations as being experts at reaching the deaf community. So I would fully expect that during the course of the bill and afterwards if the bill is passed, that a lot of the focus of their work would be exactly that. And we're just right now looking at funding applications for next year. Haven't looked at them yet, that's the job for tomorrow. But I'm expecting that that's going to be what's in them. So yeah, we would agree with you that it's really important that that deaf people and deaf organisations are the people that are communicating with the deaf community and ensuring that that understanding is there, and actually the two-way communication as well. It's not just about us telling deaf people what we're going to do, but about us listening to what you think would make policies and services better and what you think would make the BSL work, the BSL bill work, which is partly what tonight's about. So yes, I agree.
I think it's important that other people have a chance. I know, Enrique, you want to come back in, but let me see who else there is. Hello everybody, my name is Trudy Collier. Now I've been thinking, when you mentioned about the Gaelic language and the processes that have gone through there, why not look at Welsh? You know, they have a Welsh assembly, their language is recognised, they have compulsory Welsh lessons in the education setting. So why can we not look to them as an example? Why do we always look at Gaelic? Thank you, that's my point. Who would like to respond to that? That's a good point, Trudy. I think Gaelic has been recognised and has gone through the process. But when you look at Welsh or Wales, I think that's quite a different story. We did look at them and the process that they had gone through there. However, we felt that Gaelic was more pertinent to what we were looking at here. Now, am I right? Can I just double check? Am I right there? So we do need to, we did keep an eye on and have a look for comparisons. We did. Okay, I think that's that. We have Teresa. Oh, excuse me, now where should I stand? Right, just getting it sorted out, okay. As I said before, my name is Teresa Wade, I'm here again. I'm a bit disappointed when you're talking about education and the BSL will not necessarily having a huge impact. I remember when my children were young, I went to a parents' day and there was an interpreter there and I thought that's absolutely fantastic. And before I met the teacher, I had said to my son, what's the teacher's name? And I had got this sign, K-O-T-K-O-B, and I said, yes, but you know what's the teacher's name? My child didn't know. When I got there, I was right, you know, obviously the teacher needed to put a comb through their hair, but it was a visual description of what the teacher looked like. And the teacher immediately put the face down and was reading all the English text. And I had to say to the teacher, ask her please to stop, introduce herself. And I kind of got a bit of to it. She looked at the interpreter and said, tell her my name is whatever it was. Unfortunately, the interpreter says, it's not me, the mum is wanting to talk to you. And I said, I'm here to talk to you about the communication that's happening or not happening with my son in the classroom. And this teacher said, I've told this other person and you exactly what is going on. But I said to you that there's a little boy in the class that's trying to tell my son what's happening because there's no communication in the classroom. And the teacher stood up, opened the door, threw me out, of the meeting. I mean, my concern was, who was there was not qualified to be communicating with my son. I felt that my son was possibly dyslexic. And they were saying, oh, well, it's not dangerous. He's just deaf. English is difficult for him. But, hang on. And now he has a partner, he has a baby, he can have it, he has a job. But he didn't have qualifications because of the inadequacies of the educational system and the lack of proper qualified communication there. And I have to go through pillar to post, and fight for my family's rights and the education inside. So that's my point. And I'm thinking about my grandchildren. I have hearing grandchildren, but thank goodness I have 6 grandchildren who are all hearing. But on parents, see, again, you go along and you think, okay, is there going to be an interpreter there? And then it's a big question, who's going to pay for the interpreter? That always seems to be the biggest concern, not conveying all the information about how my grandchildren are doing at school. So that is my big, big worry.
I do understand what you're saying there, Teresa, that the BSL bill doesn't really impose anything or any responsibilities on the education authority, and it is up to individuals like yourself and others to push for British Sign Language to be included in schools. And further, that they're included as well in further education college and what have you. There could be a disability officer in those places to help with the support for those students in further education. Now, obviously, services are required so that they get access to the classes and what have you. And I think there's another point that Teresa was making about the funding. Now, the Scottish Government, or rather the BSL bill, will stipulate clearly the authorities that are responsible, whether in partnership or whatever, with others, to sort out the funding element and develop a plan, and as well as the national plan. So that can address the funding element in respect to access, because that will be there in the bill, and the equality aspect will be there too, and the people will have a right to access. Somebody thinking about that?
Right, please do come down to the front.
Hello, and I'm very sorry to interrupt. My name is Julie Hughes. Now, I've been sitting at this meeting and listening to the contributions, watching the contributions, but I'm still confused in respect of education. Education is key, absolutely key. I have nightmares, however, about education. Nobody is listening. Scottish Government, I don't think, is listening. Oh, yes, they make notes and give platitudes, but who's listening? And the cross-party, well, what's going on there? So I want to just come back. Let's just clarify before I move on. And let me just begin my thoughts here. The BSL Act addresses education, or it doesn't, or it's only for post-school. What were you saying there, John? Well, the BSL bill and education are separate. Education has its own act, and it's for primary and secondary school education. In respect of the formal school leaving age, there could be more influence and impact in relation to providing interpreters, listening officers been involved. In respect of the under-16s, the policies could be different to respect to the areas, it could be oral, it could be signing, it could be whatever. Lillian, let me, just 1 minute please, let me just clarify here. Education is critical, it's something that gets us all going, but I think what we should do here is ask Frank to explain why Mark in the draft bill did not include education as a critical part that should be addressed. Is there something you could do to explain?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think all the contributions that we made, education is absolutely paramount. What's been said within the national plan and within the authority plan, we're saying, the Scottish Government will have to develop their own national plans, and I would, I can't speak for them, but I would imagine that education would be up there as a key priority area. Similarly with public authorities, if you look at education authorities, education will be a key area of that. The SQA, for example, is another organisation that is listed as one of the public authorities. There was education provision within the original proposal that we looked at today. But there was an issue about whether or not, we could get this bill passed. And that's a real significant issue. And I wouldn't pack punches here. The original BSL bill, if it was, putting forward the original proposal right now, I do not believe it was passed. I do not believe we would get support. We're no shrinking away from our responsibilities here in terms of education. But it is, of course, a key issue within the listed authorities and the Scottish Government to develop their own plan and then local authorities, public authorities,
Just to add to that as well, what Frank said about, and other people have referred to, part of what happens as a result of the bill will depend on what is in the national plan. And the government memorandum refers to the work of the BSL and Linguistic Access Working Group, which you remember I said it was likely formed on the basis of the first national plan. And what we said is that that the group, the report that produced, found that, and this is the first bullet point, deaf people have significantly lower school attainment than their hearing peers, and they're not always able to access education in BSL. It then goes on to say that the national plan would set out measures for achieving improvements in the priority areas identified by the group. So while it would be for the government of today to decide what goes in the national plan, at the moment, on the evidence we have, it wouldn't be surprising if there was something about education, or it would probably be quite surprising if there wasn't something about education.
Okay. Back to Jim. Oh, and James, not Jim. Right, okay. I wonder if it's possible to maybe have an education bill or act in the future, but you're saying that it's going to be separate. I'm quite disappointed about that. So I think because that's the case, I thought.
Okay, let me just clarify here. What I want to stress is that education is not included in the bill because, well, what's important is that it can be accommodated. You've all said how important education is for deaf children, based on your experiences, etc. And it really does depend on the national plan. So that is where it can be included in the national plan. And when we include it there will be reference there to what should be happening. In relation to the bill, it doesn't specifically outline education. It's actually going to be within the national plan. So the national plan is the format and the means by which we can address the case of education for our deaf children and the provision that they need. So in a sense, that's what it is. The bill won't specifically state that. But the national plan, when it refers to the national plan, and the national plan is where we can bring it up. So it is a very positive step. It will happen. It just needs to happen in a very different way. The bill is presented, reference is made to a national plan, and that's a massive part of the bill. And within that, then education can be addressed. So let's be passionate about this. It's not a waste of time. And we start that kind of conversation, it's going to just, affect us. And that's, am I right for that? So let's be very clear, this is how we can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. What Apple says is 100%. Sorry, what Apple says is 100% right. There's not really much I think we can sort of we can add to that. But also, as Apple says, many of the people in this room will be, among those that will be shaping what is in the national plan through the advisory group. And as I said earlier on in my initial remarks here, if education was not up there as the highest issue on the agenda, I would be very, very surprised.
Okay, people have been working for a long time. Can I just, however, ask Frank on the panel if there's anything you would like to comment on or say? Then there are various people that are mentioned just there. Frank, over to you on the panel. Is there anything you would like to say? Well, I'm deafblind. I'm a strong BSL user. I've always used sign language. I acquired, I have a condition called autism syndrome. I still use BSL, although I have hands-on or a deafblind interpreter for me. Now, there are over 200 deafblind people who use BSL in Scotland, and I think we should be included in this bill. We should be considered, we should be thought about, and that's what I would like to ask. Our particular and specific needs, and that's the question I would like to put to the representatives we have here tonight.
Yeah, again, that's absolutely true, and I think nobody can deny that the issues that are sort of facing the deafblind community at the moment, and certainly that's can't be denied. Certainly, the bill is encompassing all plans on BSL as well. That's within the bill. But again, I think there are issues that will be raised when deafblind Scotland address the education and culture committee. I imagine that they will be including that bill. I know that they've been asked to provide written evidence, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're asked to provide oral evidence to the committee as well. And certainly, I have spoken to Trina O'Malley, and you know that I would expect Trina to be very clear about the problems that are going on in the deafblind community at the moment. And if there is anything that deafblind Scotland suggests, or plan to suggest that sort of do within the bill, then that's something that I'm sure both the Scottish Government and Mark will take to amendments. But certainly, the bill is everyone who uses BSL, including the deafblind.
Joe. Thank you. My name is Joe Calver. Hello and Happy New Year to you all. I'm absolutely delighted at the turnout and that we have a panel all of whom sign, and that's really important to me. The BSL bill is a massive opportunity for us more work opportunities, and really lots of opportunities. What I'd like to ask the panel, BDA, Harriet Watt, Deaf Connections, representative of the deaf community, and Deaf Blind Scotland, or representative of the deaf blind community, what do you want, the one thing you most look forward to from this bill?
Right. For the BDA, the aim really would be for more equality of access, equal access. Hopefully, through the bill, everybody in this room will benefit. Everybody throughout the UK will be seen on a more level footing. That's what we want. That's our vision. We want to see inclusion. We want to see access. That really is our aim, and that's why it's so important to support the bill as it goes through Parliament. And for deaf people in the deaf community to suffer like that. Can I just check? Right, okay. I know, Joel, that you'd asked if everybody on the panel could respond, but I'm afraid we have so many people wishing to make a point.
My name is Dominic and I'm from Inverness.
So when I go into the supermarket and there's no access on supermarket or management level, but when it comes to any other events, once we go through the BSL and those things forward, we can turn people who learn languages, who can learn for yourself. So when I was on leave, when I moved to the US in 2006, I became a manager of a night shift. And there was lots and lots of issues in Scotland. So a lot of people came to me asking for advice for work within my supermarket. And I said, that's not my duty, that's not my responsibility. And I told them, well, I signposted them in the right direction. Deaf people want to work, deaf people want to be part of the community and out in society. And 6 months later, I've asked individuals if they want to work. And there was some hindrance or barriers at the job centre, which I don't know about. So obviously I don't know the ins and outs of the job centre and how that works. But honestly, there are horror stories out there. I don't know the depth of that. I know, I mean, a lot of deaf people out there without employment and without history of employment. I'm hoping when the BSL bill is passed that deaf people are not discriminated. They are taken on as individuals for their talents and for their skills. I found out about 2 years ago, as a manager, I was going through the finals, and I was just checking a few notes. And one thing this did come out was double insurance, and because I was deaf, there was no need for that. And then they realised, obviously, we're a liability. I'm sure there's other companies out there in Scotland and throughout the UK who do not want to take on deaf people because of the liability and insurance. I think that's quite difficult for deaf people to gain employment. So hopefully, once the BSL have been passed, that these barriers are removed.
Fish's mum. Poppy's mum. Poppy's mum. Please do voice your name. Joe out. Whatever makes you most comfortable. Because Poppy also was the same color specific. And I was born in Glasgow. Poppy was born in the hospital. I obviously, as a hearing person, was out and about, able to take in information, access information, was able to participate in politics and know what was happening and be proactive. And then my baby was born and I realised she was deaf, and I thought, oh my goodness, what do I do now? The professional's attitude to my situation was absolutely awful. And I was told, under no circumstances, sign for your child, you must put her through the cochlear implant route. And it was just awful. I didn't know where to turn. I made umpteen phone calls, who to turn to. I spoke with Margot and various others who were able to provide me with a more balanced view and inform me about sign language. But the problem really with this BSL bill, as I see it, is that it's almost worse than racism, I feel. The problem is, this was my baby, and I had these people saying to me, don't communicate with her. I'm a doctor, I want to do cochlear implants. Do an implant will help the child. Well, at this point in time, I was just finishing a degree in English and psychology, and I know how important early literacy language is, but the medical profession wants my daughter to be a site for medical intervention and experimentation. So I did stage 1 class, that was fine, and then the stage 2 class, people withdrew and it would collapse, and so I was getting ready for the assignment. And in the end, I had to do it myself and my 2 daughters, 3 of us, we had to go to Bristol because that was the only place that I was guaranteed in being able to learn design, and also Poppy would have a decent education. But it fractured my family because they're Scottish, we're not English. Poppy's still down there, and we're texting every day, and it's like trying to communicate with little blurbs with the written language. She's at university, she's in her final year, and then hopefully she'll come to Scotland. But I had to stay down here for 20 years, and now in my job, I'm working with people whose parents didn't take them to somewhere the service provision was decent, and those people are still, as adults, getting support with literacy and numeracy because they were let down by the Scottish system. They were let down for the first contact with social workers and medical professionals. They were, when I went to the skills here in Glasgow, in one school, I saw Poppy that she spoke with the other children while I talked to the head teacher. The head teacher, when the door closed, she said to me, that is the most unnatural thing I've ever seen in my life. And I could not understand what she was talking about. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you're not doing it. Why are you doing that with your hands? And the other teacher in the other school, probably very bright, my little girl, and at 2 she was chatting away, you know. And the head teacher in the other school said, she can't be profound then, she's too bright. And I thought, I'm out of here. I'm leaving this country. If this is the best that Scotland can offer, now what I'm really worried about is that 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. When a hearing parent has a child, they don't know what's going on because it's quite likely that they were in the meetings with deaf people before. And luckily, I was doing a degree in English and psychology, so I could start like, she needs to have a language of expression. I'm going with the one that she access. But in so doing, I was going against every single professional that I met. And I want to make sure that the deaf children that grow up to be the deaf adults don't wait until they get to school. They don't get failed implant operations. They don't get any of that. But the parents are supported and looked after and learning to sight. Not because these hearing parents need looking after, it's because they get babies parent. So, you know, there's so many complications that need to be considered. If you want the deaf people in the future to be giving this country what they're capable of giving, then you have to look after them from when they are in their nappies. Not when they're adults kicking up about not having access, but from when they're in their nappies. Thank you. If I could just ask the panel if they would care to respond about the language, is BSL language being used in the home? Perhaps you would like to respond to that. What has just said is absolutely wonderful, and now you're able to speak from a hearing parent's perspective, but as a deaf parent's perspective, it was even worse, because there was no talk about language, it was all about the medical model, and it was so frustrating. You could talk until you were blue in the face, but everybody would go off topic and think that they knew best. I really believe that communication is key. And I had to argue and argue and argue from when my son was going through nursery and then into primary. Every year it was a fight, and it was the same argument every year. And now my son is here, he's 12, his English acquisition is absolutely fantastic. He communicates very well. I would say he's maybe about age 16 acquisition in his English language in his BSL. Okay. Who else do we have? James, you think possibly just add a little bit more there? This is happening in the hindbody. Right, if I could just remind you that the bill, there is various parts of it covering language, but the key word in it is when you talk about promotion. Promoting the language. And it's not about being mollycoddled at all. We have to make sure that BSL is given priority and takes off in the way that it should. As Hilary had said before, we have a 3-year plan, and it's not as if it's going to be finished after that. The reviews, etc., will roll out forever, but there are different stages that it has to go through and improvements that need to be implemented in it. So everything you said, Moira, I absolutely agree with you 100%. But going down the cochlear implant route, that's not going to stop tomorrow, but the acquisition and promotion of BSL is going to be ongoing, and that can certainly be promoted through the bill. Hello everybody, my name is Brian McCann, and I'm from East Kilbride. This subject just makes me absolutely boiling. Now let me think, if hearing parents have a deaf child, you know, that's maybe about 10%. I was brought up, obviously going to school, and the education system at that time was very difficult, and I suffered because of the barriers that were there, and I'm sure many of you will have been through a similar experience. Some deaf people were fortunate enough to be able to be educated down south and come back and acquire prominent positions. Unfortunately, that was an opportunity not afforded to me. And now I have a deaf family. And of course, their first language is BSL in the home. And putting them into school was going to be very difficult. The issues that I had as a deaf pupil are the same for my children. In fact, I would say it's even worse, because so many deaf schools, deaf establishments have closed. So deaf children are in isolation. So that sense of community and being able to communicate and learn from each other is being lost. I think deaf education is worse now than it was before. I was given advice and told, okay, then what's the education situation going to be for your children in the future? So that left hanging. So the question is, I put my children into deaf school and they failed. Education system failed them. parents, we approached the council and said, there are ways that the education for my children can be improved. And I just felt we weren't listened to. I thought, no, I'm not going to give up here. I'm going to campaign. I'm going to see what I can do. But it was just so difficult to get through. I really felt as if there was a brick wall being put up in front of me. I asked for advice about where the best schools would be for my children, and nobody would take responsibility for giving me an answer. So I had to knock on doors. I had to make waves myself. So where's the Scottish Government's role in the future as far as their parents trying to place their children most appropriately with access to BSL? Who's going to come up and answer that?
I'm not sure that we can add much to what's been said. There isn't anything in the bill itself about education, but I think it's likely that there will be something in the national plan. And the only other thing I wanted to say, those of you just spoken about your children as a parent, thank you for sharing your stories. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking, the stories that you tell, but that's just a personal reflection. But thank you for sharing your really difficult stories with us. So yeah, I think we just need to look at what can go into the national plan.
A lot of people are bringing up their examples and experiences, the issue around social care, for example, referred to education, employment, and so on. The bill will not solve those issues or problems directly or straight away or tomorrow. It just will not happen. The bill is only a framework. Just a framework, okay? If we try to add X, Y, and Z to make sure everything is incorporated, including all this, the bill will fail. Frank has said that. Frank has already said that. It will fail because everything, and that means everything we have campaigned and fought for over the years will be lost, and we will take a retrograde step, and we will have to start all over again. And that is just not working. I don't think so anyway. I think it's said the bill, yes, there are lots of things we would like to address, lots of nightmares, there's still a worry that we might still have and concerns about it. But let's just get it through and use the national plan or the other strategy to get it sorted, and over time we can address those things. It will just not happen tomorrow. That's absolutely impossible. If we try to do that, it will just be too expensive. The government will just say, no way, we have no money, not on, we'd love to help, but hey, there's no funds, it's just too expensive. So let's be smart, let's be clever, and let's all be smart here. It's a framework, it's a starting point. And then we can go to the national plan. National plan 1, national plan 2, 3, 4, 5, and improve them. Every 3 years, every 7 years, whatever the case may be. John, I'm aware of time, so I want to keep it brief. I do agree with what Amber said earlier, that the BDA vision is that we accept that the BDA are leaders in this respect, and that they are wanting to see BSL acknowledged and recognised able to be used at home by the 90% of those parents who have deaf children, hearing parents who have deaf children, and to provide services for them so that they've got the full support to help with their child getting access, including the hearing siblings in the family, getting access to sign language, and then the reference to getting it included on the national curriculum that was made earlier, just trying to persuade people to include BSL in education, and also to spend time on the national plan, giving the advisory group support to work with the Scottish Government based on the plan and the input from everybody, not just yourself here, but many, many other deaf people, so that it's all included. Graham has made reference to this. Hillary has talked about a 7-year timescale. Yes, it will take time, it will need review, it can be influenced on, and we can work on this, and it's an ongoing project. It's like Graham was saying, we need some element of patience, and I'm really, kudos to the Scottish Government more listening, more taking on the work and listening, working with other deaf organisations, BDA and others. And it's really important that you, in turn, approach your MSPs, you read your experiences and give evidence, film it, write it up, whatever, to give more information, more pressure on those responsible so we can get the bill we want. Okay, I think there's Margaret and then another one middle there. Oh, and I'm sorry, Frank, yes. Frank, I would like to ask one thing. Please do not exclude deafblind people from the bill. Don't forget us, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, and that's something that we but what I would say, every point that's been raised is a real legitimate concern, and you know, as Hillary says, you know, some of the stories are heartbreaking, to be honest, with what's been experienced. But what this bill is seeking to do is, you know, as well as promotion, it's seeking a cultural change within society, and you know, any cultural change is not going to happen overnight. As Graham said, it will take time. It's not going to solve all problems right away, but we do need to change how aspects of our society view BSL. That cultural change needs to happen as quickly as possible. But it won't happen overnight.
Okay, you can keep it short and sweet. That'd be fantastic. We have a good time. And if you're going to speak in the microphone.
I've been involved in extra
I've been involved in education and training for years. But for all the time, education is my priority. I agree with all the people who've spoken that. But the biggest hurdle that faces deaf people is the ignorance, the genuine ignorance of hearing people. And I know promotion is part of what's going on. I want to see television adverts, newspaper adverts, I want to see people out on the street telling people, you're talking about a cultural change. I want to see that happening on a daily basis. There are still hearing people who know nothing about deafness making decisions for deaf in education, in health, in every walk of life. And it's gone on for years and years. And that's what needs to change. 90% of the parents of deaf children are hearing, as you know. These parents start from zero. They know nothing, they're getting the wrong information. And that's because the general public out there. And just last week, a professional woman said to me, why can't we just wear celebrities? And I said, when did you learn English? And she said, when I went to school. I said, no, you learned your language from day one. In fact, before you were born, you heard the English language. How can people live in a language they don't know? It's like asking hearing people to live in Russian that they've never learned. In fact, it's worse. So get out there and tell hearing people what they need to know about the intelligence, the commitment, the skill, and all the rest of it, the determination of the deaf community. Get out there and do that, and that will make a cultural change. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you. Next. Hello, everybody. My name is Nicola. I'm really angry because of the situation I went through with my son. The education system knew my son could sign, but his standard of signing, he doesn't have a problem with too. But you know, we can try to communicate with them. So if children miss a lot, they do because they don't have appropriate provision. They don't have people brought in who have appropriate sign. Again, hearing people bringing in communication support workers, etc. for children. Some people are saying my son can't sign. And then you have the whole political argument about are they using BSL, are they using signed English? So I'm thinking that my son goes to mainstream school, and you have other people saying, what's the sign for? And also, who's there communicating for my son? And I'm saying, how for the sign? I do not really need somebody that's appropriately qualified. So it's a huge burden on my son, my younger son, trying to struggle as far as communication goes. So get people who can learn to sign. It's not a case of hearing people who can sign and
very quickly, we'll have Paul, yep, as the last contributor, because we're up against it. Hello, my name is Paul Kipling. Nice to meet you all. I have a lot of deaf friends who have problems reading, problems with the English, but what we see is much more face-to-face interaction with sign language, using Skype, FaceTime, Facebook, video, links, whatever. And it'd be wonderful to have something like that where we're finding textbooks difficult or whatever, and to have that video link or whatever to help translate and to understand. English isn't my thing at all. BSL is my language, and it's our language, it's everybody's language here tonight. We have very late English skills, but wouldn't it be lovely to have the build part so that BSL option to click on and get access, get a translation, to understand what's going on, to access the council, the parliament, what have you. Thank you. Okay, we're really up against the wire. I know there's lots more people who want to ask questions, but I think there'll be other meetings in other parts of the country that you'll be able to attend. This next session now is for Edith Buxton, who works for VDA, Director for Campaign Communication, and also for Janice McDonald, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Scottish Council of Governors. They are going to come up to the front now. Panel retire. Thank you all very much on the panel for your time. So David and Janice will come up, and we will take the next session, which is called Next Steps. Okay, could we just address now this last session, which is about the next steps? Now, various organisations such as BDA and SCOD are concerned with this because the BSL bill in Scotland is going to be the first of those in respective home countries that can possibly pass. So, what's really important is for us to support this, give this support, have the Scottish Parliament support it, and then everybody is there supporting that first step, ensuring the bill gets through, the evidence is collated, put forward, and what have you. That there is further communications with all of you and the local authorities, public authorities, and so on, see their responses to ensure that we have them adhere or follow the BSL Charter and see that this bill becomes an act, be voted on and become then there is work to be done on the national plan and the local plan. So considerable patience is still needed, but lots of working together is possible, lots of influencing, lots of persuasion, lots of work to see things set in place and then improving as we influence people. We need to do that. We don't want to lose the bill, do we? So let's work together. Work together with these individuals.
get the light in your eyes. Feel like stunned rabbit. I'm not going to say anything different. I think that it's important that SCOD and BDA and all the other organisations that are SCOD members work together on this. And it's important for SCOD to work with BDA and get information through. Unfortunately, I'm not too great at signing yet. My tutor will tell me that I've got to level 1. And I'm about to embark on level 2. So maybe this time I'll be able to have a basic conversation with you all. I think it would be really important from that perspective, I think, to understand that we want to try and get to the next stage, which is to get the bill out of the way really and focus on the plan. In my mind, everything that you've brought up in terms of points tonight is more important for the content of the plan rather than the bill itself. Just to remember that the bill is a framework. In my mind, a framework is a bit like a wardrobe. Right? The plans would be all the clothes that you put in the wardrobe. So the bill is a framework and the plans like all the wardrobe. So it's important that we focus on our capsule wardrobe for the summer and look at what sort of things we want to see in the plan. And we've already got a whole host of good information from you through the Facebook page, through submissions that have been coming to SCOD and BDA and lots of other organisations. I know that there are other sessions on as well, but it's just important from my perspective to make sure that you know that there's quite a lot of information around in written English and the signed version that's available through BDA, through our own website, and a lot of information from the government's website. Is there anything I've missed, David? Right, we're going to be the new double act that you'll see. We might get engaged within about 3 months. I promise you we're only going to partners, we're not going to get married. Sorry.
Okay, so one of the next steps is that we can give individual contributions of thoughts, experiences, and what have you, and that's in the next room where there's a video camera set up. We'd like for you to just make your contribution on those cameras and collect all the information and as this information is gone up to others, and we will be going out to other areas, internet, Edinburgh, and so on. Please do keep logging and showing the evidence about your stories, about your thoughts, so that this can go to the Scottish Government and that they can take these into consideration when they undertake to vote for the bill becoming that. And it will be the first one in Scotland, first and 4 House countries. Scotland, well done. I was talking with, I was talking to Admiral about my work at Deaf Connections, and what I'd like to do is that Deaf Connections will be having a meeting like this, and you can also again give video submissions, and that's the 22nd or 6 o'clock after the LNB club. So please do come along to that, do your video evidence. Get to reach the stage above here. Do give your evidence on the video camera or on the Facebook page. And I know education is something we're all very, very passionate about, but let's start with crossing the bill, and then we can work on it through, and we can make sure that education is incorporated in the national plan and the local plan, and that we can have access to the BSL for our deaf children in that way. So don't give up, don't be despondent, keep fighting. We will get on, we will do it, and it's another step forward. Just as you come along tonight has been a big, big step. I'd like to thank Frank McAnally, who was so smart with you tonight, and also I'm delighted that the Scottish Government has already supported the bill in principle, and that's terrific news to us. And, you know, I think if we didn't have that support or that sense of it, it would be a much more time journey for us. So I'm absolutely delighted to come along with us, Frank and Hilary, and I'm sure you've been sort of listening to what's been said, and you may make further tweaks. So, and of course, I must thank the panel that came up into the class, John Generally, Graham Turner, Roy Ross, Admiral, Frank Thompson, and who I missed. Yeah, so I think I've got everybody there. So thank you very much for you all being on the panel, and excellent work from the media to set up this event tonight. And to the chance to just do it in our own language, read together